All right, let's jump right into this explainer. When you hear about places holding world records for extreme weather, you probably picture buzzing scientific hubs or massive tourist traps. But Pathar Punji in Maharashtra? Yeah, it totally shatters that illusion. Today, we're going to unpack the incredibly dark reality of what it actually means to live inside a relentless weather anomaly. Now, look at the paradox here. It's 2025, right? We've got global satellite coverage, 5G everywhere. But this geographical marvel is literally trapped in the dark ages. It is completely isolated from modern civilization. It's a place where pure survival takes absolute priority over progress. And as we go through this, you'll see exactly why basic amenities just do not exist here. So let's get into Section 1, the new Wettest village. For years, textbooks have taught us that Meghalaya, specifically Cherrapunji, is the undisputed king of extreme rain. Well, scratch that. Back in 2019, Pathar Punji officially took the crown to become the site of the heaviest rainfall in India. The climate is shifting, and the mountains of Maharashtra are catching the absolute brunt of it. There is virtually no limit to the rain here. It doesn't just fall, it completely swallows the landscape. And the weather here, it's absolute chaos. You can literally be standing under a bright blue sky, and in a single second, boom, the atmosphere shifts. Torrential rain floods the ground, and a fog rolls in so thick it's like a solid white wall. You can't even see the trees or animals right in front of your face. It goes from totally serene to life-threatening in the blink of an eye. Which brings us to Section 2, surviving the extreme weather. Check out this number, 6 feet. That's the absolute maximum height for houses out here. They have to keep them incredibly low to the ground. Why? Because if you build a standard tall house in Pathar Punji, the hurricane-level winds that come with the rain will literally rip the tin roof right off and blow the structure away. Staying low is a mandatory survival tactic. The destruction is just non-stop. Wells completely overflow, and anything made of metal rusts out instantly from the extreme oxidation. Locals like Santosh Salke will tell you how his dad barely made it out alive when their house just completely caved in from the sheer force of the rain. And back in 2005, floods were so bad the entire village was cut off from the rest of the world for a full month. Zero outside contact. Because it's so insanely wet, the villagers have to constantly burn firewood inside their homes. I mean, they literally have to keep a fire going 24/7. And remember, they're in a restricted forest zone where cutting wood is highly regulated, but they don't have a choice. If those fires go out, the dampness will cause fungal decay to rot their walls and roofs into dust. So what do you do when the rain just won't stop? You pray for it to end. The locals worship stone representations of Chakoba, which is an avatar of Lord Shiva. They do this by stacking piles of stones. And fun fact, this practice of worshiping piles of stones, or pathar, is actually how the village originally got the name Pathar Punji. Moving on to Section 3, cut off from society. 20 kilometers. Think about that for a second. That is the brutal distance these folks have to trek just to find a doctor. If someone gets hurt or seriously sick, there are no ambulances. The villagers have to physically carry their injured on their shoulders, hiking for 4 to 5 hours down treacherous, muddy mountain trails. And since there was no help coming from the government, the villagers literally had to take matters into their own hands. We're talking 500 to 600 people from 3 different towns pulling together whatever meager savings they had. They spent up to 2 years breaking stones by hand and leveling mud just to carve out a basic dirt road so vehicles could occasionally get through. But here's the heartbreaking kicker. They aren't even allowed to pave it. Because Pathar Punji sits smack in the middle of the protected Chandoli National Park forest zone, permanent roads are strictly illegal. So their handmade dirt track is incredibly vulnerable to massive landslides that the villagers just have to manually clear away year after year. All this isolation leads straight to a massive education crisis. Teachers simply refuse to come here. There was actually a teacher named Pramod who got a severe slip disc from crashing his bike on these awful roads. So with no functioning schools, the kids have zero options. They end up migrating to Mumbai, spending 15 years doing grueling daily wage labor like painting, just to survive. And get this, it's 2025, right? But there is absolutely zero internet or cell network in the village. Nothing. If you have a medical emergency in the middle of the afternoon, you have to hike up this one specific red dirt hill just to catch a single bar of signals. You can make an SOS call. Let's look at Section 4, Living with Wild Animals. Remember that blinding fog we talked about? Well, it's not just a crazy weather effect. Since the village is inside a national park, that fog acts like a massive curtain hiding wild animals. You could walk out your front door and literally be feet away from a dangerous predator that wandered into the village, and you wouldn't even know it. To give you an idea of how dangerous this proximity is, locals talk about this horrific incident at the nearby Bairavagad fort. Some tourists saw a wild goer, which is a massive, incredibly muscular Indian bison. Because of the bad visibility, they thought it was just a domestic buffalo and tried to shoot away. The bison charged and tragically gored a person straight through the chest. This brings us to our final section, the ultimate human wish. So, with all this raw, majestic nature surrounding them, the endless green mountains, you really have to ask yourself, are the people living in Earth's wettest village actually happy? Well, this quote from a local pretty much says it all. Jine kilie ji rahe hai, life idhar hai hi nahi, which translates to, we are just surviving, there is no life here. It totally shatters any romantic idea of living out in the wild. When every day is a battle against the elements and isolation, it stops being a life and becomes a pure test of endurance. The social toll this takes is just staggering. The constant rain rots their rice crops, meaning virtually zero income. There's no entertainment, and honestly, worst of all, the village's reputation is so notoriously harsh that outsiders outright refuse to marry their daughters into the community. Nobody wants to subject their family to that kind of extreme hardship. And the craziest part, they've been waiting for a way out for decades. The government actually first promised to relocate them back in 1985. Through the devastating floods of 2005, through breaking global rainfall records in 2019, all the way to today in 2025, they are still just waiting. They're hanging on to a tiny shred of hope for either a safe paved road or a total relocation. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this thought. When nature breaks these spectacular, jaw-dropping records, who is ultimately left paying the price? Are we so obsessed with the data and the extremes that we forget the actual human beings struggling to survive inside them? It's definitely something to think about the next time we marvel at our changing planet. Thanks for hanging out with me for this one.